It's April, so it's time for another Doctor Who ranking. Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name's Kevin, I'm a geek, and you are watching Kevin the Geek. Yes, once again, it is time for another ranking, and once again, this is something that you guys have chosen. If you have missed any of my previous rankings, I have ranked all of the regenerations of Doctor Who. I've ranked the best cold opens. And recently, as part of my 100 subscriber thank you special, I ranked all of the Doctor Who series finales. So if you have missed any of those, go back, check them out. I will put a link in the playlist in the corner. But for today, we are going to be ranking the best one-time villains of New Who. It is New Who. I'm not close to being competent enough to be able to include all of the ones from Classic. So for now, it is just New Who, and I will probably do this again at some point in the future and try and include some of the Classic villains. Now, one big caveat here. I had to think long and hard with this. Whether you could count an individual enemy, even if the actual species was technically a recurring villain. Like, for example, if you could take the Dalek from the episode Dalek, because that, of course, only appeared in one episode, but the Daleks, of course, appear multiple times. I did decide ultimately I'm not going to include them, sort of, with one exception, which is on this list, which I'll get to in a moment. If you like the idea of me doing best one-time villains that are technically otherwise recurring, drop a comment down below and let me know. I've got 10 to go through. Let's get started. At number 10, The Alliance from the Pandorica Opens. Now, this is the one that is a big exception to that rule that I kind of put in here. And the reason I'm doing that is because of what they are. They are an alliance. And I feel that this is one of the very few times where the Doctor has actually been defeated by an enemy or enemies. And I just love the idea that they all put aside their differences and came together for one singular goal: to stop the Doctor in order to save the universe, weirdly. It was really bizarre, and you never saw that coming, especially the idea of them working together. It was brilliant. I'm putting them where they are on this list because, realistically, the way that they were defeated, by putting the Doctor into the Pandorica and imprisoning him, they in effect caused the event that they were trying to prevent. But it was such a great concept. Just wish we'd had a little bit more of them. At number 9, from Amy's Choice, the Dreamlord. The Dreamlord is a wonderful character. He's such an opposite to the 11th Doctor. Obviously, they wear kind of similar clothes, but just their very mannerisms is so opposite, and that's what they were going for. Toby Jones is an amazing actor. He was so good in this, but I wanted to put him higher. But the reason I had to is basically because the Dreamlord didn't exist. And if the whole psychic episode thing hadn't happened, then he would have never been there, and it still changed absolutely nothing. In a way, I wish they would bring him back, but actually make him real this time, as opposed to a psychotic episode. At number 8, Brother Lassar from School Reunion. Brother Lassar, he is the head of the Krillitanes, played by the amazing Anthony Stewart Head. And another one that I wanted to put him so much higher up on this list. I love the idea of the Krillitanes being this sort of composite race that's made up of all these different cultures of aliens and planets that they've conquered over the years, which means that they very easily could bring them back in the future and have them be a completely different design, and it would be so unexpected. If you were to include the Krillitane aspect of this and had made this character turn into the bat-like creature, he wouldn't have made this list. It's because he remains in the humanoid form. That's what enables him to make this list. Because Anthony Head is so intense and creepy, and you are listening to every word he says. And that scene where you have the Doctor and Anthony Head on opposite sides of the swimming pool, and all they're doing is talking to one another. There's no action, no bravado, they're simply talking. That had one of the most brilliant scenes between a Doctor and a villain, still I think to this day. I think it would take a lot to beat that one-on-one scene. Number 7. The Family of Blood. So these ones, I feel they were sort of backdrops to a really good story. And I feel that the main bulk of the story wasn't about them. It was about the Doctor, Martha, the nurse. They were the focus of this. They happened to be a problem that had to be overcome and led to some very deep questions. As villains, I love the idea that they were trying to become immortal, and the Doctor gave them that immortality, just not in the manner that they had expected. But overall, I think they just lacked the oomph that you get on some of the other characters on this list. They are good, but I feel that they're props to a better story. Number 6. House. From the Doctor's wife. If you need one man to be threatening, menacing, just with his voice alone.
Fear me, I've killed hundreds of Time Lords.
Fear me, I've killed all of them.
I can think of not many actors better than Michael Sheen. He's an actor who I've always said I would love to see him play the Doctor. Oh, actually, I don't know. Maybe even the Master. That would be an interesting one. But Michael Sheen just injects so much personality into a voice. And the plans of this being, which is to trap and kill all of these Time Lords and all of these TARDISes, is just fantastic. And again, he is a bit more of a side prop to the story, I think. But compared to the Family of Blood, he's so much more dangerous. That he plays these mind games with Amy and Rory as they're trying to run through the TARDIS and try to amuse himself. Such a good villain. Number 5. Zelen and Rakaya from Can You Hear Me? Now, I came into this not expecting to have any Jodie Whittaker era villains on this list. And then I rewatched this episode. And I tell you what, it surprised me how much I forgot about this episode, but how good they really are. Because these characters are essentially gods. They're unbeatable. And the sinister nature, particularly of Zelen, if you had watched it, you would have known that he appeared in Torchwood, Children of Earth. And he was really good in that and really creepy. So it makes complete sense that they would bring him in for a role like this. The whole story was just creepy as well, with the whole ear things in the ears. But just how you'd be in the child's bedroom and then he's just standing there in the corner in the darkness. Oof. I got chills watching this. Again, I think what prevents them from being higher up on this list is the surprising ease in which they were defeated. Which, considering they were effectively gods and unbeatable, it left a lot to be desired. And once I'd finished watching the episode, it reminded me why I'd kind of disliked it in the first place, because of I thought it was quite a weak ending for them. Number 4, the Vasto Narada. Now, you could argue that technically they aren't a one-time villain, because there was a series of Doctor Who games that you could download from the BBC website, and there was one of those games that featured the Vasto Narada. But if we're talking just the show, my God, are they sinister. The whole idea of not every shadow, but any shadow. And Stephen Moffat was so good when he was writing all of his episodes before he became showrunner. He always liked to prey on childhood fears, you know, losing your mum or a monster under the bed. Here, he goes for the fear of the darkness and shadows. And he was so good. And the idea that they could literally rip the flesh within milliseconds. Again, it just felt that they could not be defeated. Technically, the only reason that the Doctor was able to defeat them was by making a truce. You go away for a day, let me save all the people, get them out of here, then you can have the whole library to yourself. It was so good. And the idea that you took the skeletal forms in the spacesuits and was able to kind of make them move and talk, it just added to that creep factor. Number 3, the Beast. So the Beast, or the Devil, for a more in-depth discussion of why I think he's so good, please do go back and check out my review of the Satan Pit and the Impossible Planet. Taking aside the generic visualization of the Beast when you see him in the Beast form, the design when he's possessing Toby with the bright red eyes and these millennia-old symbols on his hands and his face, and the creepiness, particularly when he goes to possess Toby. It's such a threatening villain. And when you have a villain that can really only be defeated by being sucked into a black hole, and yet technically still kind of survives in the minds of people that still believe in the devil or the other devil-like deities that exist within the universe, that is a scary villain. Number 2, the Flood. Now, the Waters of Mars is always going to be a little bit of a Marmite episode. Some people hate it, some people love it. I'm not going to tell you my thoughts on that, because I will be doing a review in the future. But for now, in terms of the villain themselves, the design is amazing. With the whole kind of dead, cracked-like skin around the mouth. The way that the water is just constantly pouring from them. And the scariest part of it was when it's not a flood that gets you. It's one drop. And of all of the deaths, shall I say, that appeared in that episode, the one where it got Roman from that singular drop, for a character who at that time I really did not like, to give me such a massive twist of emotions. I felt so suddenly so bad for him. Yeah, it was a tough one. Again, maybe the only thing that I would have changed is maybe not have the scene where they kind of start talking, because I felt that kind of took away a little bit from them and the mystery a little bit. I like the plan that they go for, that they want to go to Earth because it's full of water and everything, but overall, yeah, that tiny little bit aside, I just would have taken that out otherwise. But it's a damn good villain. Now, before I go into my number one pick, here are a couple of honourable mentions. From Oxygen, The Corporation. I love the idea that there's a corporation so evil in the future that they are literally charging people for oxygen in deep space. And I kind of imagine it being something that would happen in real life. Gus, from The Mummy on the Orient Express. Now, most people would probably consider the mummy itself to be the villain of the piece, but in a weird way, I don't. I think Gus, the computer voice, the person behind the voice, whatever you want to say, he's more of the villain of this story than the mummy is. But the fact that Gus would go to such lengths to try to be able to capture the foretold, that he would literally force these scientists to work by sucking people out of the train into space. What a bastard! The Empty Child. Similar reasons to the foretold. I don't consider the Empty Child to be a villain. It's a great character, do not get me wrong. It causes problems, do not get me wrong. But he's not what I would probably class to be a villain. He's not trying to kill the Doctor or gain world domination or anything like that. He's simply a lost little boy who wants his money, enhanced by alien tech. That's not a villain to me. Finally, at number one, the Midnight Entity. Now, I can't say anything about the design of this villain, because we don't know what it looks like. I can't say anything about the plans of this villain, because we don't know what it wants. This villain is one of the few that truly broke and defeated the Doctor. And if it wasn't for the hostess, the Doctor would not have survived that encounter. When you have this villain that by its very nature is really creepy because it seems to possess this woman and then starts speaking back and repeating what other people are saying using Sky's voice. It latches onto the Doctor. Gets to the point where they're literally speaking in unison.
You know exactly what I'm going to say. How are you doing that? Roast beef. Bananas. The Medusa Cascade.
And then, eventually, starts taking his voice and talking ahead.
And I'll help you. That's a promise. So, what do you think?
Do we have a deal?
The impact that this villain has on this group of tourists is bigger than any other villain on this list. Because it takes these normal, ordinary people and turns them into people that they wouldn't ordinarily be. Because they're so scared. Because they just can't understand or comprehend what is going on. And like I said, if it wasn't for the hostess, the Doctor wouldn't be here. This is a villain that I've read recently. There's a few people that would like to have this villain back. But I disagree. For me, it's kind of like Jaws from the movie, up until the point that you saw the shark. It was terrifying, but as soon as you saw the shark and you saw how bad it looked, it took away that impact. And I feel it would be the same thing with this. If you brought it back, if you tried to replicate it, or if you tried to explain it in some way, you would diminish everything that was so good about this episode. Think of Blink. Eventually, the Weeping Angels just became a caricature of themselves, to the point where you made the bloody Statue of Liberty into a freaking Weeping Angel. I mean, that... whoever came up with that idea needs to be shot, frankly. But that is going to do it for this ranking. I hope you enjoyed it. Please drop a like. Please subscribe to the channel if you're new. And please make sure you click that notification bell. Remember to keep looking out on my channel for more polls I'll do each month as I put more thoughts out to you guys to help you guys choose what you would like to see me do next. But until next time, my name's Kevin, I am a geek, and you have been watching Kevin the Geek. Goodbye.